Now, as I've gone around the district, and if I'm talking to a housekeeper at one of the hotels in Marion, or I'm talking to somebody sweeping the floor, I've not had one single person working for one of those minimum wage jobs tell me that they're ready to hand back $40 at the end of the week because they got $40 too many after trying to feed their kids and put a little gas in the car. So I think the folks in this district would support that, and I certainly support that.
I heard on the radio yesterday Michelle Bachmann giving her farewell address, and one of her big statements was the trickle-down economics works. I mean, how would you answer that?
Have you got your business page here? Let's see. The Dow closed yesterday at 16.4. Now, it's down from the high of 17.2, but that's nonsense. If trickle-down economics works, we'd all be wealthy. We'd all be wealthy. The productivity gains in this country have been nothing short of phenomenal. Yet all of that wealth growth has been, and I'm not in the top 1%, but in the top 0.001% is where all of that economic wealth has clustered. So if the trickle-down theory worked, we'd all be driving Lincolns or Cadillacs or. I got to be careful there. I have to not select one brand. So,
Unless it's driving that 1975 Lincoln.
Yeah, 75 Lincoln. All right. Well, that's a collectible. My gosh.
I wish.
You better keep that on the road.
I wish.
Your race is being very well funded. Both national committees are putting in a lot of money because it's been deemed by both national committees to be competitive, while the 15th district race has not been so designated. So the disparity in spending is enormous. The Democratic candidate, probably to some extent, because he wasn't going to see those funds anyway, said he wouldn't accept them. But what does this say about campaign finances and what could and should be done differently?
I think everybody agrees. I don't think you can find a single person in the 12th Congressional District who would disagree that we need to reform campaign financing. It is absolutely ridiculous, the amount of money that's being spent, and the fact you don't know where it's coming from. Just a little fresh air and sunlight would help. The most recent attack ad that's up against me, I've never heard of this committee, and you don't know who's on it. And I can't even remember the name. What's the name of that latest attack ad group? At any rate, you've all seen them. But guess what? You don't know who's spending that money. And I can pretty well guarantee you they're not anybody from the 12th Congressional District, because anybody can afford to write those kind of checks. I would have heard about, and you would have heard about in this congressional district. First of all, we need open disclosure as to all campaign financing. I have to file quarterly reports, and as the election gets closer, the last several days before the election, we have to file a daily report of every contribution we get. Of $200 or more, and there are maximum limits. Nobody can write a check to me for larger than $2,600 per election. So whether it's primary or the general, that's so an individual could give up to $5,200 for any congressional campaign, but that's the most. But you have these campaign committees, and you have these shadowy corporations that are pumping not millions of dollars, but tens and even hundreds of millions of dollars. The Mitch McConnell race in Kentucky, $100 million. Now think what the Pashard Foundation for Abused and Neglected Children could do with $100 million. It is absolutely obscene what we are spending on these political races. And frankly, it just, when did Mike Bost declare he was going to run against me? He started running against me back in, I think, June of last year. So for a year and a half now, he's been running against me and raising money, and of course I've been doing the same thing. We need to shorten these campaign season. You know, the Brits do it in a couple of months. So when you're in campaign mode all the time, it's hard to get serious legislative work done. So I think we need a shorter campaign season, we need open disclosure of all money that's spent in political races, and frankly, I think we need to eliminate all of these shadowy committees and alleged nonprofit groups that are educating the public. I think people have a right to know who's spending what money to get what message out. It makes for a better consumer.
For all the reasons you've elucidated over the last hour, why not make House seats 4-year terms?
That would be fabulous. And I think that is a great idea. Let me tell you why. And I was advocating that one day in the halls of Congress. And a somewhat more senior congressman looked at me and said, "Bill, that's a great idea. You want to know why it'll never happen? Tell me." He said, "Because the Senate would never allow it to happen. They know that if you had a 4-year term in that off year, you'd be running for Senate." Or a lot of congressmen, I'm not saying I would be, but a lot of congressmen would elect to try and move up. So that's why it'll never happen. Cynical, but probably a bit of truth to it. And, you know, I mean, it would require a constitutional amendment. I mean,
Sure.
Anytime you're trying to change something like that, there's a whole lot of inertia to move that boulder. But I agree with you, it should happen. Do I think it's possible? I'd have to go back to Thomas Jefferson and convince him we have to do that.
You talked about the timing of campaigns and having to run and how long the campaign season lasts. This, in I think people like my eyes, impacts some of the things that get brought up and pushed through because there are things they don't want to take a vote on because it's close to election season. How do we, for me, that's part of the reason why the 12% is 12% in my head, because it just feels like they stopped doing the job to get the job again. And how do we fix that problem in both sides of the government? I mean,
How do we change human nature? People put off unpleasant tasks. I promised my wife 7 years ago that I was going to clean the garage. Well, I took the job as the full-time commander of the National Guard, so I had a good reason not to clean it. I got elected to Congress, so I had a good reason not to clean it. If I lose this election, I'm going to clean the garage. But that's why I have to win. I agree with you. It is...
I'm tired of waiting for you to clean the garage.
I agree. And, let me tell you how naive I was. I was so naive when I went to Congress nearly 2 years ago, 21 months ago. Now, I'll confess that as I was getting on the plane, I dropped my crystal ball and it shattered. But I thought, well, we're gonna work a big budget deal here. We're gonna work a compromise, and we're gonna get this whole budget fixed because everybody understands it's in the best interest of the nation. Guess what? Didn't happen, did it? I was naive, and I was wrong. I was going to say at least one of my most favorite expressions, but it's not my most favorite expression, but it's something I learned to say, is that bad policy makes good politics. And so what we frequently see in Washington, and this is, I had hair as long as yours before I got there, but I've ripped it all out. What we see, and both sides do this, the Democrats are just as guilty as the Republicans doing this, this, we just do it a little different way. They will take a bill that is maybe a good, responsible bill and something we ought to pass, and then they'll add 2 or 3 or 4 clauses that make it impossible for you to vote for. Or that they will add something in, the Paul Ryan budget, added, I don't know, $10 million extra for veterans. All right, well, of course, what it did is it slashed the CDC, slashed the NIH, slashed Pell Grants, did all this horrible stuff. Oh, but when you vote against that bill, you voted against veterans. They don't say that, oh, by the way, you voted against slashing Pell Grants, you voted against slashing the CDC, you voted against slashing the NIH. No, that's not in there. And what's fascinating to me is of course, the Democrats do too. If you watch some of the attack ads that are being run against me, and you watch the attack ads that are being run up north against Rodney Davis, same ads. Same ads. Same votes. Same vote. One of the attack ads that's being run against me attacks me for some of my votes, particularly increasing the debt ceiling. Who else voted for that? Rodney Davis, John Shimkus, 150 Republicans or so voted for that bill. And it was money that had been already spent by previous Congresses. We had to pass that bill. If we didn't pass that bill, the United States of America was in default. We were in default if we didn't pass that bill. So they take bad policy and they do politics. It's really irritating. And instead of doing that, we'd be much better served if we sat down. When I went to Congress, I took an attitude. I spent 35 and a half years in the military, and it was get the job done. Give me the resources, give me the mission, I'm going to go do that job. Unfortunately, when you get to Congress, it's a completely different attitude. And that's why I had this scar on my forehead from banging it off the table. But, so. Any more?
We're good. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.